So, a very good day to Dr. Hanta and also all of my friends here. And today I'm going to talk about the mini project, which is also the assignment tree of language and communication theories class. And so let's start with an overview of the assignment that I have conducted here. Is that first of all, I actually relate the Compassion and Wellness webinar, which is a webinar that I was a part of the committee member for, with the media theory of uses and gratification theory, which is actually introduced by Katz, Blumler, and Gurevich in the year of 1974 in their journal article. So basically, the objective of why I actually research on this particular topic of interest is I want to understand what are the motivations of the subjects involved in this event. It could be the committee members, it could be the speakers, and it could be the audiences themselves, and also what does this webinar actually contributed for them in some way or so. So moving on is that what is the Compassion and Wellness webinar? So first up, I just want to mention here that online webinar, which is this Compassion and Wellness webinar that we have conducted, we actually generated through live Facebook on the Facebook page itself. So this is considered to be a new media where this is involved the use of technology and the use of the internet itself. So if you look into this poster here, you can see that we actually have this live on Facebook on this particular page here, Compassion and Wellness Webinar 2021 by Language Academy UTM. And we have two particular sections here throughout this whole Compassion and Wellness webinar. We'll be talking about things that actually is involved with the pandemic and how people have been engaging themselves with the pandemic itself. So the first section here, we actually talk about sustainable community development on how Mr. Eddie Suresh and also Ms. Farida Baptiste here can actually give to the community and what they have actually learned from giving to the community itself. And it's a very insightful section that we had. And we have Dr. Siva here on the second section, which we actually have him to talk about the how to deal with loneliness and isolation during this pandemic, especially on the area of mental health itself. So the whole preparation period by the committee members of the popular culture class alongside Mr. Ghazali, we took approximately a month from the end of November 2020 to the December 2020, and the webinar dates are on 5th January, which we held it for an hour, and 6th January, which we held it for half an hour. So at the same time, we provide e-certificate, which actually became a really attractive feature that actually attract a lot of students to this Compassion and Wellness webinar. So as we look further, I would like to introduce the theory that we are looking into here. It's the uses and gratification theory. So in some way, we also call it as the UNG theory. And this is actually firstly, as I mentioned, it was introduced by Katz, Blumler, and Gurevich in their research article in 1974. And the research article is actually called Uses and Gratification Research. And this is in the Journal of the Public Opinion Quarterly of the winter 1973 to 1974. So actually, this whole uses and gratification theory is mainly used to actually understand the uses of media. So specifically, we're talking about how people use this theory to examine, explain, and to understand, to comprehend why actually people use such a media. It could be internet, or it could be a social media, or it could be some different newspapers, and actually what do they actually receive from it. You know, is it they want to get information, or is it for entertainment purposes, and things like that. And the basic assumption, the really general assumption that users and gratification theory hold, is that users are using different media with different intentions to derive. It's because that while you're using one particular media, chances are people are using it for the sake of, let's say you want to get hard news information, or in some way you are looking to get entertainment basis where you're just wanting some relaxation or some indulgence in certain media forms. And of course, all of this that we have mentioned here in the uses and gratification theory involve traditional media and also new media, where traditional media is definitely involving things like a newspaper, radio, television, These are all considered as mass media. And then we have new media, which involves more on the internet and online web network. So moving into the types of needs, which is actually discussed by Descartes, Gurvich, and Haas research in 1973. So in this research particularly, we are talking about 5 different needs, ranging from cognitive needs, where cognitive needs, as you can see here, it's more, the keyword here is more about information, knowledge, understanding things, experiences. And for affective need is more on the emotional and the feeling side, the emotion side of people, of mankind. And we have personal integrative side, where personal integrative side is more on the self-esteem, self-confidence, credibility of a person, status of a person. And then we go with social integrative, which this is more on like how do people actually want to fit themselves into a community or a society, a small society, we could say, or something more on relationships building, connections maintaining. And then we have the fifth one, which is we call as tension release need, which related to more on the entertainment side, where people can actually generate a form of escapism from real world and the reality we all live in. So these are the 5 dominant needs that we are looking into as we analyze further. So when the subject studied from this webinar is that the speakers are the first, are one of the category, and then followed by community members, and then the audiences category. So we have 3 dominant categories we are looking into while we are relating it to the UNG theory. And so the findings is that first of all, we're talking about community members here, the people who are actually hosting and organizing this webinar session. All right, so the cognitive need wise, we'll talk about knowledge. Of course, through by holding this webinar, we understand more on the knowledge field of sustainable community development and also mental health issues, things like that. And of course, in some way, we finally have this experience of what it feels like to host and hold a webinar online. And effectively, we're talking about emotions. In this way, we have this joy. And of course, at the same time, we learned how to work as a unity form. And then in some way, we feel fulfilled as a way of like doing things as a team, the feeling of unity between us. That is one of the effective need. And then we move on to personal integrative need, which of course, this is obviously and generally, we have done it to achieve assignments grade. And of course, at the same time, while we are doing it, we find that we actually can increase our own credibility as a student or actually as a teammate yourself to others. And then we move on to social integrative need. Well, social integrative, as I mentioned, was about connections and building relationships. And of course, by conducting this webinar, by joining the webinar, we get to actually fit into the class, fit into the team, build connections, build new friendships, and even bond with people. And of course, moving on, we have the tension release need, which is the relaxation, the escapism from the real world. Is that, of course, while we are going through this master course, definitely is more on academic qualifications things. But of course, sometimes it becomes a little bit on the fun side when we get to create something out of the class, out of the academic context, which we get to create a webinar, which is something out of the box for all of us. And then move on to the second finding. We're talking about the subject of the audiences. Of course, the subject of the audiences can involve anyone at all who actually watched this whole webinar session on the 2 days of our webinar. And first of all, connective need. They get to learn more knowledge about sustainability and about a lot of different things, about how to deal with your mental health. And of course, you get to learn to access live webinar because we have a lot of people who actually throw us questions on how do we actually get to access webinar? Do we have a link and things like that? And of course, throughout this webinar, you get to learn to access technology. And effective wise, you get to understand your own emotions more as you listen to things, what Dr. Siva could say about one, and then you can actually understand more about what you're dealing inside of you, and to finally be open about healing yourself. And then we move on to personal integrative needs, which of course certificates and attendance is a very important thing we have here that people are attracted to. And at the same time, why do people actually want this so much? It's because they increase the credibility as a person, as a student. And when you tell people, oh, I have attended such webinar, which this context has actually helped me in my own area of interest, this helps you to increase your own credibility as a person, as a student. And then we move on to social integrative need, where when all these people actually watch our webinar, you can actually fit into the community itself. You understand what the community is going through. You understand what it feels like to give back to the community itself. And then at the same time, you can provide assistance to friends or families if you need to, because oftentimes we meet problems that we don't know how to handle. But throughout this webinar, you can actually get insight on how you can actually deal with certain issues, or you can help your family or friends go through certain issues during this pandemic. And of course, this tension release need is that it's something leisure and mindful to be involved in. You can just play the webinar and then you go through it. And then in some form, it's just a form of leisure entertainment. And then we move on to the last subject here is the speakers. And first of all, the cognitive need of the speakers themselves, which include Mr. Eddie, Mr. Dr. Siva Kumar, and also Ms. Farida Baptiste, is that they get to exchange opinions and visions. Of course, they are the one who giving us knowledge, but at the same time, they get to exchange opinions and exchange insights between one another. And then we go to affective need is that they get to express their emotions. What does it feel like, to be involved with such kindness, and what does it feel like giving back to the community? And all of this contributes to joy of sharing with us. And the personal integrative need is that as they share their experiences, it actually helps increase their reputation and credibility, because through that, we kind of trust them more, and there's a sense of increasing trustworthiness. And of course, more recognition comes. And social integrative needs is that they have helped to educate the community, to bring more to the table, to tell people how you can actually help and contribute to the community during this pandemic, and how can you help your friends, how can you help your family, you know. And of course, the last one, tension release need, is that, throughout these professional experiences all the speakers have every day throughout their work, their charity work, it's really just something fun and relaxing to join in this webinar and to just let out what they are actually thinking of and what they want to inspire people to do more. And of course, just a reflection and conclusion on my side is that media can be a very informative platform, ranging from positive or negative informations. Various subjects have differing needs, as we mentioned in our findings that the subjects of community members, audiences, and speakers definitely have differing needs, and the benefits and gratifications of each media on different individuals are actually really depending on are they individual, are they community, and are they groups, and how it can impact them in the long run. And all media, including the traditional media or the new media, as I mentioned earlier, actually give out different needs for different group of individuals. So no media is compared to be better or not, but just with different uses and gratifications. So here are a little reference that I had for this research. And then this is the end of my presentation, and thank you for listening.